Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be looking at an introduction to storytelling. So term one is an introduction to storytelling, as I just said. And unit one, our essential question is, why do we tell stories? So we're going to look at the importance of stories and storytelling. To begin, I want you to take a look at what is happening in all of these pictures. Take a few seconds to yourself and just look. It looks to me like in all of these pictures, people are talking with one another. I hope that's what you saw as well. Well, our first question is to why do we tell stories? We share stories as a way to communicate with others or talk with others. So in the past, there were no tools or materials for writing things down. Therefore, people had to use words and stories that were memorable to be able to communicate and to pass things down to the next generation. So if you look at this, the first printing press was made in Europe in 1440. So what did they do before that, right? Well, they had to communicate. They had to use their words. The first pen wasn't made until 1888. Okay, so to write something down in a note to your friend, you couldn't even really do that till the 1800s. Now they had other ways, scribes and you could use rocks and whatnot and chisels to make words, of course. But think about how difficult and time-consuming that is. So it was much easier for people to just speak with one another. As well, only the wealthy knew how to read, right? So I have a picture of Bill Gates, and he's holding a bunch of books because, as we know, Bill Gates is very wealthy. So only the wealthy knew how to read for a very, very long time in history. So being able to communicate and speak with one another was a reason we would tell stories. It would help us to remember because we couldn't have everything written down or we couldn't read very long ago. So I want you to take a look at this. We're going to look at another reason why we tell stories. So what's the difference between the people on the pictures on the left, where this arrow just pointed? What does it look like they're doing? Scratching their head. They look kind of confused. Maybe they've forgotten something. Well, what's the difference with this gentleman on the right? He has a light bulb moment. It's almost like he just remembered something and after reading. So there's a distinct difference between these two sides. These people on the left look like they've forgotten something or they don't remember, and this gentleman looks like he just remembered something. So another reason we share stories is to remember. So there is a study done by Stanford's School of Business that said stories are remembered up to 22 times more than facts alone. Okay, so we want to tell stories because they're more memorable than me to say there are 20,000 different species of insects. But if I tell you a story about insects, you're more likely to remember the story than you are just the fact alone. So another reason we tell stories is so that we can remember and pass down family culture and family history from generation to generation. And this is very important, again, when we didn't have writing utensils or printing presses. You know, we had to tell these stories to help our children remember our families and our culture, as well as our lineage. You know, where we came from. It's very important that we all feel it's special to know where we came from. So when we didn't have a way to write this down, we told stories to help it to be more memorable for the next generation to remember where we came from. And lastly, family traditions. Can you think of some family traditions that are special to you and your family? I'm from the United States of America, and we have things like Thanksgiving. That's very important to my family and to my nation and where I'm from. I wonder what some really important traditions are for you in your country or where you're from. Try to think of a few. I'm sure you've thought of at least one. So the next thing we want to look at as to why we tell stories and why stories are so important to us as humans. Look at this picture. Look at all these pictures. See what's happening here. I hope you can see what I'm seeing, and that looks like there's teachers or teaching or learning happening, right? There's a lot of teachers here, 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 and students learning. Well, another reason we tell stories is to teach others, and that way we can learn from others. So teaching and learning is an important reason for telling stories. So we use stories to teach others about the world and to educate them. We teach others about social norms, or what is normal in society. So don't murder someone, right? That's pretty common in all societies. I know that's a bit harsh, but you can and can't. Things like social norms or what is normal in society. So being polite, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be kind, things like that. Stop at the red light, stop at the stop sign. Things such as this, don't murder, don't do anything bad that you can harm other people, things like that. We also tell stories to teach survival tactics. So, of course, before, back in history when we knew a lot about the world and nature, some people had to learn by trial and error. So some people ate poisonous berries and died. So it was more memorable, as you remember what I said about facts and stories, it was more memorable for the people, the older people of a society to tell a story about their grandfather who ate the poisonous berries, rather than just saying, don't eat the poisonous berries. Okay, so when they told a really elaborate story about their grandfather eating these poisonous berries, and at first he was so excited, and then all of a sudden he croaked over and died, and so that puts more of a picture into people's heads rather than just saying don't eat poisonous berries. But it is important that we learn to run from a lion or a tiger, or to run from danger. Or have you ever put your hand on a hot stove or a hot top stove and gone ouch? So, we learn to not do such things. Okay, what's happening in these pictures? To me, it looks like everyone's really enjoying themselves. They look happy, they're smiling. I think these folks are at the movie theater over here on the left, and other people are reading books and watching TV, and they look like they're really having a nice time. Well, one of my favorite reasons as to why we tell stories is we tell them to entertain. So I love to read a good book. It's so entertaining. I can get totally captivated in the stories, such as Harry Potter. I just feel like I'm inside of Hogwarts when I'm reading Harry Potter. So, stories are great for just entertaining. Or what about watching a movie? I love the Marvel comics. I love watching Thor and Endgame. These things really are entertaining, but they're also stories. We want to tell stories to tell a friend a funny one. Hey, this thing happened to me. It was so funny, and people are entertained by these funny stories. And finally, of course, we want to find ways to educate in an engaging way. So, hopefully I can tell you more stories than just to spew facts at you, and so you're engaged more than just bored off your tail watching me talk up at the front, right? Great. So, can we remember all the ways that we tell stories? Or reasons why? And I wonder if you can think of a couple more reasons as to why we would want to tell stories. Stories are important. Remember this. Stories are remembered more than facts alone. So stories are very important to us for many, many reasons, and I bet you can think of one or two more reasons why. Well, it's important for us as we're looking at an introduction to storytelling, because in this unit, we will define stories, we will analyze stories, and we will create each type of our own story. We will begin with fables. Fables are great. They're short, but they also have a very distinct characteristic to them. So you'll define, analyze, and create one of your own. Haiku is great because we can learn more about poetry and forms and syllable counting, but we'll define, analyze, and create one of our own as well. Ballads. I love ballads. They're great stories, and they also rhyme most of the time. They should. So we'll define, analyze, and create ballads. Greek myths and tales. Do you like Thor? Do you like Marvel comics? Well, there you go. There's some Greek myths and tales right there. So we'll define, analyze, and create those. Finally, we'll end by building up to short stories. Short stories are great. We're going to learn lots of elements of literature, literary devices. So we will define, analyze, and hopefully create our own short stories. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching.